Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I don't know. I think we have some participants from Australia. It's probably evening already. So just a short overview of what's going on with the implementation of the UNESCO recommendation on open science and how our working group or how each one of us could support the implementation. Just a reminder that it's the first international policy-making instrument, and 193 governments supported it. And now they have to report about the implementation. So ministries of foreign affairs already received invitations to prepare their talks at the next UNESCO General Assembly. So it's really, it's a serious policy instrument that requires commitment from the governments and also requires some steps. And it's also the first internationally agreed definition of open science, which includes openness of scientific processes, stresses the importance of multilingual content, which is important for Asia Pacific, but also all other regions. It includes a very good list of values and principles. And I already saw some institutional and national open science policies that also include same values and principles in the policy documents. So really, UNESCO recommendation on open science provides a very good wording for these values and principles parts of policies. And then it offers a set of actions that different actors could take to implement open science in their countries. And those values and principles are around building a common understanding of open science, developing an enabling policy environment, fostering a culture of open science, investing in human resources, investing in open science infrastructures and services, promoting innovative approaches, and among some innovative approaches are preprints sharing, and also sharing negative results, because sometimes negative results could be as important as positive results, because it would help people not to duplicate their efforts as researchers. And I would like to explain a process that goes on, that goes on around the implementation of recommendation. In UNESCO, UNESCO set up 5 working groups around different topics of these recommendations. So I'll start with open science capacity building. And the slides that I'm showing are not mine, but UNESCO slides. The idea is to influence change in the conventional scientific culture, because we already discussed in the beginning of this session that a significant change is required, how researchers behave, building human and institutional capacities, having adequate infrastructures in place, including reliable internet connectivity, aligning incentives and revising criteria, how researchers are promoted and evaluated to really reward excellence in research, and data sharing is part of that excellence, and also addressing unintended consequences of open science. So now the idea is that towards the end of the year, in December, when there will be an international science conference in Africa, UNESCO will offer a set of support tools. And those support tools are structured around so-called Open Science Toolkit that would help countries and institutions and research infrastructures and libraries and everyone else, researchers, to implement open science. So if we start with open science capacity building, then UNESCO is doing an inventory of open science training modules and materials. It's trying to identify existing gaps and address those gaps with new materials. And what our working group is doing is really relevant and would be very helpful. So there was a process when initial inventory of open science training materials will be launched towards the end of the year, and then it will be expanded next year. And this is how capacity building in open science is considered by UNESCO, that it's really capacity building on individual researcher level, but also institutional level, research and education networks level, national levels, and all other levels. And these are some of the topics that recommendations will cover, and also these are the topics that training materials will be structured according in the inventory. And I think all of them are really important to our working group. And like I said, that's a process. So UNESCO is looking on what exists, where challenges are, and how those challenges could be collectively addressed. So we should expect some drafts in October, December. Then another working group is around open science policies and policy instruments, because like I mentioned, it's really, it's a legal document that requires actions in terms of policies or policy instruments from countries. And countries and institutions are asked to align open science policies and also they ask to adopt and implement policies and strategies to support open science that wouldn't put in disadvantaged position researchers at different career stages. So early career researchers should be carefully considered, and of course also established researchers. And now UNESCO is developing a repository of open science policies to help countries that would like to learn from best practices, and also to trying to identify what current challenges are in adopting those aligned policies, and how that all could support the implementation. So again, an inventory is going on. There was a request to provide some information by July. UNESCO is synthesizing it, and this working group will meet again in September. And all the working groups are open to anyone. So if someone would like to get involved, on the first slide when I was showing UNESCO Open Science website, there is information about all the working groups and when they will be meeting. There was also a call for best practices in open science, and UNESCO will be sharing those best practices submitted. And there was an exercise with a number of partners to publish a special edition on science policy and governance on open science. So that's also something to expect later this year. Then we mentioned that in order to have efficient open science implementation, you really need to align incentives, and that's another area and another working group. It's called Open Science Financing and Incentives, and it is looking into shared mechanisms, how research career assessment and evaluation criteria could be revised, and how researchers could be rewarded for practicing open science. And there are already a number of developments in Europe and in Latin America in this area. So there are some good examples to learn from. And that's an area where data sharing and open science practices come, because the call is to include broad range of indicators, not only publications in the journals with high impact factors, and actually impact factors should be really abandoned from discussions, because they don't really tell much about the quality of individual research or individual researcher. And this evaluation should be more context-based and qualitative and not quantitative. And fair data sharing and also sharing data according to care principles play a large role, as well as well-documented and usable software, protocols, workflows, and all other activities. So that's another area that is going on now, where there will be recommendations for revision current research career assessments and evaluation criteria learning from current best practices. And a next working group meeting is planned for September, and we should have some results towards the end of the year. Open science infrastructures, according to UNESCO, are prioritized as shared research infrastructures supporting the needs of different communities, and there is a strong emphasis on non-commercial open science infrastructures housed by countries' institutions, because this not open and non-commercial nature really contributes to sustainability. And infrastructures are viewed very, very broadly. So from scientific equipment and instruments to platforms for publishing journals, data repositories, computational facilities, data manipulation infrastructures, and all other infrastructures that enable researchers' collaborations around publications, data, and all other research outputs. And what's important for UNESCO is that those infrastructures support interoperable standards. And those interoperable standards, I guess, is one of the areas of our working group activities. And also what's really important around those recommendations, that infrastructures are people, so community building efforts are really important, because that also contributes to the long-term sustainability and strengthen this nature of public open science infrastructures that guarantee long-term commitment and preservation. So research and educational networks are one of the research infrastructures in the UNESCO recommendation. So they have a role to play to support the implementation. And there is a call to governments and institutions to invest in supporting open science infrastructures. So these are some of the key questions that UNESCO is looking at. And when we talk about data sharing, I guess this question of cross-border data sharing is important, and also how to set up shared open science infrastructures in the most efficient way, and how to support those shared infrastructures. And there will be a checklist and a guide for open science infrastructures from UNESCO. And also UNESCO is building an index of open scientific infrastructures that support sharing of knowledge in a number of UNESCO priority areas, which is biodiversity, water, disaster recovery, geology, and oceans. And maybe that's another area of collaborations for our working group, where we could help with a list of such infrastructures from the region. And then there is the last working group, which is called the Open Science Monitoring Framework, and it hasn't met yet. It will meet in September, and it will try to set up a global monitoring framework for open science. So it was a short overview, and happy to provide more clarifications or more information. Thank you. I think it's a good context for us in the working group, and it gives us a lot of food for thoughts and areas of activities.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Any questions from the audience? Anybody have any question now?
I have one question.
Yes, please.
Okay. Thank you, Iryna. One of the problems with the people, I mean, the country that they have a resource. Sometimes they didn't want, but they sometimes is reluctant to share their data or their facility, except one or two countries where they open. And how the UNESCO have not push, I mean, strong and I mean engaged to the country that they maybe they didn't want to share because of their maybe national security or something. Yeah, even it's not really important. Like in the COVID itself, the COVID have a good example for discussion about many things about the data sharing and the COVID itself. But okay, that's in the health in the topic of the health. But in other topics, sometimes the people still reluctant. Like I mentioned, like where I mentioned about the doctors. Yeah, they are very reluctant to share the data, even the common data, even with the standard of using the I forget about the interactions data in the radiology or in the data network for the radiology DICOM. Even the DICOM itself has the standard and a very good standard, but sometimes still they are reluctant to share. How UNESCO can pursue, or I don't know what to say, to encourage not only the APAN or the institution that they have the data. That's my question. Thank you.
It's a great question. Thanks a lot, and a complicated one. So one of the activities is to explain to researchers the value of data sharing, and I think here we should really emphasize that UNESCO isn't calling to share sensitive data or share which is a matter of national share data which is a matter of national security. Here we're really talking about research data that could be open that doesn't have any privacy concerns. It's not a sensitive data. It's a data, or if it's a sensitive data, then it's really anonymized, so that human subjects can't be tracked back. So it's this principle of as open as possible, as closed as necessary, and it's also about efficient management of data, because I think all researchers realize that there is a danger of losing data, and there is also the importance of keeping data related to publications, for example, because what changed is that journals started requiring researchers, when they submit journal articles, to deposit data in a publicly accessible repository, or if the data can't be deposited, maybe it could be shared internally with the journal and with the reviewers. Because if just a text, if it's just a journal article that is submitted, it's almost like an advertising, and you really need to see the data to verify the results presented in the journal article. And also, you mentioned COVID, and I think what played a role was a strong push from funders to share data. And you're right that data hasn't been really shared properly. That's still an area where we can do better. But at least there were some efforts, and a number of efforts, to share data under data sharing agreements. And also, if there is a direct benefit to researchers to share data in a way that when they submit their end of the year research reports, they could include links to publicly available data sets, for example, showing the research productivity, so that this data sharing is really rewarded in research assessment and evaluation, then I think researchers would be willing to do that, because we all know that it might take years to write a journal article, but while you're still writing, you need to show that you are doing something, you are a productive researcher. And this data sharing is one of the activities that could be mentioned. And some funders, for example, in Europe, European Commission now says that when researchers submit their research proposals, when they describe how good they are in the research that they do, they asked to provide links to widely used data sets, for example, and if they could point to their data sets publicly available, and if they could also include some usage data, that's for the funder, it's like a quality, one of the quality stamps that a funder is looking at. So things are changing. I'm really positive that there will be changes, but there is a lot of work to do, and this work needs to happen in different domains, because there are different arguments to share data in different domains. And I guess that's one of the areas we would like to get involved and to help to build this new culture, data sharing, without harming researchers, of course, because we are not forcing researchers to share something that they can't share or shouldn't be sharing.
Yeah, maybe like UNESCO can have like a case study or something like case study or something like a story about the champion story about some institutions that share the data and then the benefit and the impact of the share of the data. Maybe it's make people understand that the importance of the sharing of the data, and it's important not only for them, but for their society, for their colleagues, for their for others. Yeah, like in the climate change situation, many data sharing, and people can access the data And so everybody agree about the climate change finally. So everybody talking about not I mean almost all the people, because right now people like in Indonesia, okay, in there is some not really different, but there is some changing about the climate itself. And usually in dry season and dry and wet season sometimes different, but now is one day there's a hot season, dry season, and other day there is a wet season, wet or dry or high free. So people understand about the situation, but when they understand, they are trying to looking for the what's happened, and then who's institution that can serve something like not only the data but the story itself about this change. One of that's my maybe my suggestion. If UNESCO can have some champion and then story about the good the good institution or anything about they're sharing the data and the impact of the society on the impact of in the world. Maybe many people will accept about this.
Thanks a lot. I'll bring it back to UNESCO, and it's very good suggestion. Thank you so much.
Good practice always just something that people are looking for. But if big, like for example, in my field, remote sensing, they open a lot more when NASA opened this Landsat program for free for the data, and then the Google Earth engine provides funding and tool for people to use, and then later European Space Agency opened the Copernicus program, open the Sentinel data for free. Then people can see that if they're not open, other open already. Like big big organization need to open their data as well, because you can have so many good practices, but it will go down back to the same thing that this is classified, this is blah 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 whatsoever. So and this kind of change that you mentioned, yes, it will make people open more data because they are now it's in their backyard, so they concern more rather than not. This is very big issue and big concern, that how to really open the data, open and sharing with free will or something like that, because some group of people, this has happened already. They use the data that you open and do something about it and come back to you, bite you in the back again with that free and open data. That's why it's like they don't want to open it, because of so many details happen later. How can we prevent that to happen? I really don't know, but much better for now. What we have been open for the data, comparing with 20 years ago, we are open more and more, and that's a good sign. But to be at the point that we would like to see, I really don't know. I don't know. Yeah. Any further comment, please, Iryna?
Yeah, maybe it's also an area for our working group, if each working group member could commit to identifying one data champion from the country or from the institution, and we could try to document those data sharing examples as advocacy materials for researchers.
At least within the participant in this working group can share their own country, at least we have one each to begin with, and then how we can insert into what Jun-ichi already prepared for us. So
yes,
maybe
that would be a good
content and see how can we do it. Please.
All right. Okay.
Please.
So I wanted to make a short report about one of the example of our activity of OSD working group. We built one portal site, APAN data web portal, data.epan.net. So I want to start. So this is background. Last time, APAN 53, we decided one action plan from March to August 20 to 22nd. And so one of the action plan is starting the website of our working group. The URL is data.epan.net. And this site will be set up with Markus-san and NII in Japan, it's me, and with NII funding. At first, we tried to make mock-up first, and after that, we also constructed the structures and many functionalities. And at this time, we could completed the launching new website. So our data site scope is 4 points: open science and research data management, and resources from the region, Asia, and also from other regions that could be useful for the research. And 3, audience is data services, data stewards, founders, librarians, and researchers. And we need more people to get this portal site. And our portal site want to show in all languages. It will have an option to filter out by specific languages before starting browsing through all of them. And our portal site provide resources, and it contains 4 categories: events informations and training materials, useful links and tools, and best practice. This portal site can answer how to put open and sharing data into a real-world practice. So this is the infrastructure of the APAN site. NII in Japan constructed the server, and APAN and APAN secretary groups with Markus-san provided the domain host to this server. And we constructed the CMS as WordPress. So it can provide the joint ops, it can provide the joint operation with OSD working group members. So we can collaborate to construct all this WordPress. And APAN data site are now first released. And this is a schedule of constructing this APAN data site. We started at May, and we built infrastructure from May to July. And now we have first released to Open Science Data Working Group teams. And now we are inputting additional resources. And I think we will finish the constructing at around the October. So this is a screenshot of our first release of APAN data site. It opened in Open Science Data Working Group teams to release check. And at the top page, it's showing recommended each 6 contents in each category. And it's a training materials page. Contents are now, it's very poor, but we need to add a lot of materials in the world. And we need to make more rich site with this polar site. And it contains training materials for data sharing. And useful link and tool page is like this. And it's same as others. It contains also these resources. And finally, best practice page. It shows best practice for data sharing. Okay, so this is results of building APAN data site. We OSD working group building the APAN data site for data sharing of real world. And APAN data site provides the information of events, training materials, useful links, tools, and best practices. This site will be published around October. So this is short report, but thank you very much. That's all.
Okay. What do you mean by the real world? Sharing data, the real world, mean like we can use it for sure, something like that. Is it?
I hope this can reflect to the actual working, because we can have many guidelines or good rules and many organization to make share, make open, but we cannot real move or real activity. So we need to go to next step. I think it's the real world.
Right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, we can have a bunch, a lot, but
Yes.
yeah, in the real world practice, so we have to select the one that really work.
Yes.
Put everything in. All right. Okay. Understood. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So the date is not like the release date in the October is the end of October or mid of October?
It's great question. Yes. I want to set up in mid of October. So okay, I'll do my best.
Yeah, and then the WordPress that you have to give permission to the people to help populate the web portal, I think. Yeah, and anybody would like to get the permission, I think better not give it to everybody, I don't think, but just the people that really want to work on it can get the access from Jun-ichi, I think. Cannot open to everybody.
Yes, this site is published in open, but data updating, it's, I think, OSD working group member or other collaborator should do it. We need to make a quality control. So yes, after that, we want to share the key to get access this WordPress.
Right, okay. So at least Iryna will get it. She would like to.
Yes, I will share to Iryna-san later. Now I'm preparing.
Anybody just would like to get it, just would like to help out. Just me too.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just let Jun-ichi know so he can provide you such access, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
I will construct the path to get access. Yes, for updating. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, with in the broken promise, and there's some useful links that Iryna put it in the chat, and Madeline, maybe you would like to Madeline, right? I would like to elaborate a little bit more on what you provide us in the chat, please.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Marion. I'm from the Australian Biocommons. It's my first APAN meeting, so still kind of wrapping my head around what happens at the meetings and what you guys are up to. But yeah, Australian Biocommons, we generally support various communities within Australia who are generating bioinformatics related data. So my role at Biocommons, I'm a human genomics data specialist. That's why I kind of posted a little bit in the chat about that. So that's where my kind of experience lies. And yeah, we just find it's difficult, particularly in the human space, because there are a lot of legal things around specific human data and clinical metadata and demographics and things that people need to be careful of. And I think in general, I think researchers maybe don't get good guidance or don't have a really good understanding of what they are allowed to share and what they aren't allowed to share. And that kind of results in people being very cautious and very hesitant to share because, you know, you don't want to be responsible for breaching a patient's privacy or something like that. And I think it's really difficult to find that balance of sharing the data and getting maximum use and actually, you know, being of benefit to society while still maintaining that kind of privacy aspect of that human related data. So I think in the human space, we're still kind of navigating that. And I think in Australia, there's not really any overarching guidance from the government or like saying what you can and can't do. So it's a little bit hard. Whereas I know in like the US, the NIH kind of spells out quite clearly like, oh, you know, you can share these bits of metadata, that's fine, you're not breaching privacy. And it kind of gives researchers a bit of a clearer understanding of what they can and can't do. And then I guess as was kind of discussed, there's also that mentality of some researchers where it's like, oh, it's my data, I need to hold on to it tightly and like get all my papers, and being hesitant to kind of let other researchers have a go in case it backfires or whatever. So we get a little bit of that kind of attitude as well. And at Biocommons, I'm not particularly involved in a lot of the projects, but we also do generate a lot of data that can be more open. So from like other organisms, like threatened plants and animals and things, which that kind of data can be kind of released more openly and stuff. So I don't know if any of that is useful or could contribute.
Yes. Similar problem. Like I want to publish the paper first before I release this, but I said like, we have problem now. We cannot wait for your paper in the next 2 years and you release the data. We have problem now. So please share first. But no, even in the case of Thailand, we working in the disaster working group, and then the storm surge coming in Gulf of Thailand. So we would like to get the data, and then asking the tsunami center in Taiwan to run the simulation for us with the cloud system that they have over there. But we couldn't get the basic data for them to run because of the security thing. And by the time that, you know, everything done, all the storm passed, everything calm, now you get the data for what? I said, like, for what? No, we don't need it anymore. Too late now. It's already passed. Something but they're afraid of the security, something like that. But yeah, so sometimes like the tsunami happened in Peru, we can get the data from cannot mention Indonesian government agency that they have very high resolution bathymetry to run a good simulation of the tsunami. So we understand more, but to really get it directly, you don't know the guy, I don't think you can get it. But now it's like, seriously, you know, it's happening. So please, something like that. So this is like still very, very, oh, Sensei, you are here. Really? Wow. Thank you. Well, yeah, it's kind of very difficult, the mindset that we have to talk about. This is like, yeah, difficult. Like this morning, some guy sent me that, I don't know what the mass extinction. Until then we will willing to do something. Like, what are you going that far? That what he thought. That is this guy from WHO. That what he thinking. Like, why not open it up? Like, it's like, yeah, people are different. But for example, like the simple metadata that so we have this, we can share and we can do the catalog. This happened like 20 something years ago. They don't want to do it. It's too complex. It blah blah blah, and then would like to do like minimum so we can share and we know the quality of your data, or you know what you are doing, so we don't do the complicating, I mean duplicating again. No, you have to, I mean, try. We try. This is the case in Thailand. We try and try, even sit down and then, you know, writing for them, then go type in the database. No, they don't want to do it until now. This is like kind of a real world, like Jun-ichi said. This is the real world that we are facing. But how can we really make it real? You know, that's kind of a bit. I still don't know, but until like I said that if it's not in their backyard, they will not care until then. But now it's like you look outside, like the cloud, I mean the rain cloud now look different, like dark and big, like change, everything changed. And they have to understand that if we're not sharing and we're not willing to help each other openly, is all of us will be in very difficult situation altogether. But do we need to wait until then? I'm not sure. I don't know. Markus, would you care telling us about what you would like to let us know about the sharing data in Australia regarding the patient? I think patient, right?
I didn't really want to focus on that. That was just a recent discussion on the mailing list. But I mean, that's okay. I mean, I'm happy to talk a bit about that too. And Marin's got some excellent experience in that space. But I certainly know that in Australia, back when we started surveying the disciplines, every discipline had their own particular reason for limiting the sharing of data for various reasons. And I talked about that in the presentations at the previous APAN meeting, which I'm happy to share with people if they didn't get to see it in APAN 52 and 53. But when we surveyed the communities back in 2007, 2008, you know, every discipline said, oh, I can see great value in sharing the data as long as it's not my data we're sharing. And, you know, they had a whole range of good reasons for that. Actually, let me quickly grab a slide. Let me share a slide with you here. Let me share that one. I mean, those of you who were here at the last meeting as well, my Zoom window's gone. Where's my Zoom window gone? There we are. So we basically talked with a whole range of different disciplines about their requirements and so on. And it was really interesting that most disciplines had pretty much all the same reasons. But the medical community, and by medical is again a huge, huge space. You know, the genomics is one end of the conversation, the clinicians and cancer surgeons and so on are another end of the space. They had really great fears about what they could and couldn't share, not just for competitive advantage, but of course, privacy and ethics issues. And we had a situation in Australia where the ethics approval for researchers to get access to medical data was actually overseen by ethics committees at every single hospital. Not by a state or a national framework, but by every single hospital. And there was no agreement between the hospitals. And so in some cases, researchers were given access to data that was collected by the hospitals. And they were told by one hospital that the data could be used as long as it was secure, kept private, de-identified, or anonymized. And there's an important difference there. And that was okay. And others said, you can have it, but you can only have it for 12 months, and then you have to delete it. So one project had multiple different data requirements. One of the things, and the reason why the paper that we're using is about the Asia Pacific Data Commons, is that in 2006 now, we wrote the paper towards the Australian Research Data Commons. And interestingly, we now have the Australian Research Data Commons, but it's a slightly different beast to what we talked about then. Because back then there was no money whatsoever. So it was all about a culture change conversation, about expertise, about funders who could do different things. Let me just find, I think we had I won't worry about the slide.
Yeah, you show that the data common that we're trying to do for APAN, please.
Yeah, exactly. So we basically tried to build a national framework, and nowadays in Australia we have a lot of things lining up. We have infrastructure providers, we have a national security and identity federation, we have big supercomputing facilities, we have the networks. That part is easy. But more importantly, we have the policy framework where the funders expect data sharing in most disciplines. And if you apply for funding from the Australian Research Council, and to a lesser degree, the National Health and Medical Research Council, they say, oh, we expect you to share the data, or tell us why you won't. And most researchers have good reasons why they can't share the data or don't want to share the data for some period of time. We also have service providers that do things like de-identification and anonymization of data, which is really important when you're dealing with rare diseases, or uncommon might be a better term, or with active cases. So where people are actually getting ill with an unusual disease. You know, the way coronavirus broke out originally was, you know, a few hospitals identifying common symptoms. And they basically said, you know, if we'd only had the data coming in from all the hospitals, we would have seen the sudden uptick of the same common symptoms in many places, and we could react to that. And that was something that, you know, 15 years ago, some of the hospitals here in Australia, in Victoria, I don't know if Marion's aware of those, they got together into a partnership and agreed to share de-identified data. De-identified means you can reverse it. So you can actually go back and go, hang on, we've actually got these common things occurring. Is it one person going to 5 different hospitals, or is it 5 different people, or is it the father going here, the son going here, the grandfather going here, and it's a genetically caused condition and so on. Sorry, I'm rambling a little bit because there were so many discussions that we had coming up, and you kind of surprised me with the question. But that's okay. So we have now in Australia this really good framework. We've made good progress, and the awareness of in the research community, and also importantly in the institutions, of their obligations around research data sharing is far, far stronger. And you know, in some cases, there's even research data management plans required with a funding application. And so there is some really good expertise. There's some really good examples of how things went well or didn't go well. The medical space is still a problem. We had a meeting a few years back where medical researchers said, oh, we're happy to store our data with you guys, but we need to come and inspect your data center. I don't know many doctors who understand how data centers work. You can show them a cage, you can show them security and passes and biometric security access and so on. And they, you know, they wouldn't have a clue whether it's a 5-star repository, or, you know, with no security or whatever, or a really poor one, but they felt obliged to go check it out. And so part of the problem we had with the medical community was that sharing of, the understanding, I guess, or the awareness of what a good repository was like, and how it was operated and how secure it could be and so on. Yeah, Jennifer just mentioned in the chat there as well, there has to be a data management plan with your funding application. And we have that now. And I think
Well, yeah,
several
but
European countries.
how, just a little bit, Marcus, like Jennifer said, who enforced it? The government? I mean,
Yeah.
this is from the US government to say so.
Well, what it comes through the funding rules. So basically, when you make an application for funding, there has to be a data management plan in there.
Yeah.
Secondly, more importantly, it has to be followed up, because if you don't do the work, you know, what's the recourse? You've already been given the money, you've already done the research. Well, guess what? You're going to apply for more research funding one day, aren't you? And one of the first things you report when you make an application is, what did you do with your last grant?
Right.
So there's the ability to follow up.
But that
Marion mentioned the point. It's an expectation. You know, the mandate is still a bit rubbery in many disciplines, and especially when you get into personal data. There are groups like the Australian Bureau of Statistics. They have a framework for sharing data with researchers. And weirdly, they are the national authoritative body for such data about the population, the census data, and so on. And it turns out researchers discover they make mistakes from time to time. And so they republish the data to say, this is the improved, repaired data set. They offered it back to the government to say, look, we found some mistakes. Do you want to fix that? And they go, no, what we've written in our repository is the authoritative record, even if it's wrong. Yeah, anyway. So that's where we've currently landed there. And that's one of the things I think Australia can do better at sharing with the community. And that's why I was interested to hear what Kazu-san, who's not here yet, no. When Kazu-san was talking about the framework that Japan is setting up, there's some really good work going to emerge from that. Some already has. There are many papers and articles and reports that we've done over the years. You know, I've probably got 100 PowerPoints on my laptop here from my own presentations and from other people's, that I'd be more than happy to curate. And some of those papers, like the original Australian Research Data Commons, the what was called the ARIES report, the Australian Data Sustainability Report for Disciplines, that I was one of the authors on. That's a useful document still. I'm amazed that, you know, many of the things that predicted came true. We had some really good people working on that. So I'm hopeful that, you know, all of that experience can be used. The one thing Jun-ichi-san didn't mention is that we're also looking at the ability to provide a directory. I wouldn't say a repository, but a directory of data collections, similar to the Research Data Australia discovery platform, where we now can harvest repositories from institutions, facilities, agencies, and so on. That proved to be culturally transformative. I don't know how heavily it gets used, but when you can point to it and say to people, go here, here's a map of Australia, you draw a square, and it'll tell you every data set that's been collected in that square. Whether that's ecological, hydrological, people-related, weather-related, and so on. You know, that changes the way people think about data. And then you can explain to them all the other value things. And totally agree with the conversation Basuki and Iryna were having early on, that the discipline champions are absolutely vital. They transform things. We had a researcher at one of the Melbourne universities in X-ray crystallography. He just went, this is brilliant. This whole idea of sharing the data, he built the first discipline repository and it just took off. And people were contributing stuff to him. And then a completely different discipline in linguistics, in language studies, built a global repository for endangered languages, because what they realized was that all of the, that's a useful link there, thanks, Marion. So one of the things with Research Data Australia I should mention is that it's very generic, it's not discipline specific. And so hence you see the discipline specific catalogs like this as well appearing. But oh darn, lost my train of thought there, it doesn't matter. So basically what I was hoping we could do in this working group is to use the data.apan.net as the target for domain champions. That's where I was at. to show some of these disciplines. And that's why we've invited the working groups from APAN. And I don't see Karika-san here yet. She might come in the next session to talk about what's happening in their disciplines. The linguistics one was actually set up by Marion. You're so quick with the searches. Nice one. Paradisic was exactly it. So Linda Barwick, who set that up, basically had funding to digitize all of these analog recordings that have been collected over 50, 60 years on magnetic tapes and cassettes. And they were just rotting and falling apart. And they were being stored in like sheds in Port Moresby in Papua New Guinea with no air conditioning or anything. And so there were languages there that had 200 people left in the world speaking them. And languages like DNA, you can trace history through language because the same term or similar terms get used as people migrate around the world. And we got involved with my infrastructure group at the time and a couple of others and said to them, don't worry about the physical infrastructure, do the digitization and do the metadata, do the descriptions, do the analysis. And she went from running a project based in Australia dealing with half a dozen Asian countries to a global platform partnership in 18 months. So if Marion's really quick, look up Delaman. I presume that's still going, but basically Paradisic is now run as a platform that other linguistics researchers can publish into. And, you know, they're talking about, for example, that's the one, thank you. There are currently 6,000 languages in the world. By the end of this century, there'll probably be 200 languages on Earth, right? So all of that cultural history, all of that linguistic history is disappearing. And that's what Delaman and Paradisic are trying to capture. So if you want to get people enthused in that space, get people like, you know, Marion can probably speak to her community. Well, certainly she can. Linda can talk to the linguistics community. There are some really good champions out there. And at the moment, I think a few of them do come to APAN meetings. So we need to get them a bit more involved. You know, we look at the working group chairs, right? Shimizu-san and Karika-san in the telemedicine working group. Probably someone like Eric and Chai can talk about disaster management and hydrology. You know, when you line lots of people up like that, it gets really, really powerful. And that's why I was trying to hope with the plenary session that we're having tomorrow was to encourage to have more open data and open science plenary presentations so that all the working groups, all of the attendees get to hear about this, not just the 20 or 30 that come to our sessions. Sorry, I'm just soapboxing here, but I didn't want to do a presentation, so.
It's okay.
But you just wanted to have a discussion.
Yeah, that's the point that we would like to move forward, how we can make it move forward.
Yep.
Really give the impact to within APAN first, I don't know, then NREN get involved fully. So that's what we're trying to talk and discuss this time. Then we can move forward on that direction until next APAN. Yeah, but before that, Jennifer would you please say something? What's going on in the US?
I can't speak to much of newer developments. I mean, everything that Markus has said is what we've seen here. I mean, if you apply for grant funding, you have to include a data management plan, which is evaluated as part of your proposal. Some funding agencies, for example, the National Institutes of Health, will look at what you did last time. And if you haven't met those requirements, you will not get the next grant. I know of several cases where grants have been denied because data wasn't shared. NSF, which is the more common computer science networking funder, is not yet doing that. But it is becoming much more common here. And, you know, I think we struggle with different requirements and understanding what the requirements are And I know we started with a number of conversations in the medical field, but we're in APAN, look at the network data. So my team, for example, has a network measurement plan, a network measurement tool called NetSage. And we share SNMP data, which is just volume, which most people don't really care about, and it's pretty open. But we also share publicly, and we're funded. So there's this tension between the government is funding us to do something. It's taxpayer money, so there's an expectation that taxpayers can see the result of what you've done, versus privacy concerns of I don't want, I'd love it if my phone number weren't out there on the web pages where you can just find it. And privacy in the US is very different than other countries. So for example, my UK friends are stunned that if you put in my name and the city I live in, you can look at my house, you can see what I paid for it, you can see who else is living in it, you can find out about my relatives, you can tell that, I grew up in part of Massachusetts. All of this is just out there commonplace. But for network data, we also collect flow data, but we de-identify it. We don't anonymize it. That's different. We drop the low order bits and de-identify it down to a subnet, so it is not personally identifiable. And we do this in part because of the European GDPR requirements, but also we did not want the security risk of having personally identifiable information in our tool. That means that the data isn't as useful to some researchers. I can't tell you which researcher or which computer is sharing data with which other computer with the public data sets, but it's enough for us to see trends, which is what our tool is used for. So I think there's this tension that we need to think about of having data that is shared in a way that is privacy preserving, but still useful.
That's very difficult. Privacy preserving at that.
Yeah, it is very difficult, but we need to think about it. So you started this session by making a comment about, well, why can't the hospitals just share data with each other?
Right, yeah. Then
oh my God, no. I'm going to Africa in a few weeks, and the person organizing the travel asked me to email him my bank account information to have a direct transfer for the per diem. I'm sorry. I said, no, I won't do that. Unlike someone else, so this went out to a group of 15 of us. Someone else on the mailing list responded to all. I mean, so I view email is I'm sharing that data with everyone because, everyone knows your email really isn't private. So same thing with the medical records. How do you want them to share it? Because I would really like to have some of my medical records private from the people who know enough about this.
Yeah, that's the case. Yes, I was in a committee. We talked like almost a year regarding this. The patient data, but we're talking about the emergency. So if in case of emergency, we need to be able to access that. But different,
why does an emergency override my privacy?
That's the thing. That's why
there is no way to do that. That is an impossible scenario that you are asking people to do. I'm sorry. And I think that this is for medical professionals who understand it, not computational scientists or hydrologists.
Right. I don't understand.
And I think there are different data standards for different types of data.
Correct.
Right? So I treat SNMP data and flow data very differently in my space.
Right.
Okay? Very differently. There are different concerns, there are different needs. I don't do anything with medical data ever if I can avoid it, because I don't want to get into that mess. Quite frankly. I have a lot of respect for people who do.
Okay.
Just one thing to add in there. There's some nice frameworks emerging. In fact, the ARDC in Australia has written some papers on this. They talk about a risk management framework around data. And so it talks about when you're trying to store the data, what are the impacts and risks associated with the data? And that in turn informs the processes for collecting the data, the consent requirements, the release requirements, all of those sorts of things. But I will also point out that over the last almost 20 years we've been having this conversation, the medical data conversation is
Mm.
always brought up as, if you can't solve
Yeah.
that, we can't do data sharing. And it's
That's-
like, no, they are a small component of all the disciplines, all the data sharing problems, everything else.
Mm.
So it's a good and important thing to keep in mind, but somebody made the phrase, don't let perfect be the enemy of good.
Well, and
Um,
also medical data is like the hardest one. So why don't we start with something easier?
No. I mean, like this is
You know?
just an example just example that we talk about. We're not gonna go into that math.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, so like if you think about, when you're doing house repairs, it's a big difference between, rewiring an existing lighting fixture, for example, versus rewiring an entire house versus rewiring a hospital with their requirements, right? I'm comfortable rewiring the overhead lamp in my dining room. I'm not going to do those other ones.
Understood. Yeah.
So why don't we start with the
Agree.
simple things
No,
and wait for medical until we've got a bit more background, I guess.
Right.
is what I would suggest.
The example I brought up is just we have too many patients that the ambulance cannot access the information needed, so that patient became paralyzed and stay on bed the whole life, just because the guy doesn't know what's going on with the guy that trying to get help. So they have to wait too long. Then now the number of this kind of patient increasing in Thailand. That's why the doctor.
The opposite of that, the other side of that is that person, maybe that medical record would have kept that person from not being paralyzed, but would have prevented them from ever getting a job because their employer would see, oh, you have these health conditions, I'm not hiring you.
This is like
Is that worth it?
Only. Not everybody can.
But I'm saying it's a much more complicated situation than just the narrow scope you're looking at.
Right. Correct. I just was happened to sitting in there, and then why? Just like the example that like they have so many kind of ambulance to send out. They just want to know that they send out the right ambulance. So that's why they need the data. But the other side said no, it's privacy. So okay then. And then we still keep arguing about this, and we couldn't do anything about it. So the patient with the paralyzed condition increasing in Thailand, and the other side said, but still have no conclusion. Said yes, it's we're not supposed to go into that too much. No, not at all.
Let's move on to the other disciplines, Joe.
Yes.
Yes. Well, other topics.
Yeah, maybe, well, since the sensei here, you still here, the network, the data sharing about the networking. Can you share a little bit on that? Jun-ichi sensei? Maybe he's not there. Okay, anyway.
I mean, maybe Chai, it might be useful now that we've got the data.apan.net site. I mean, I'd like to see it, even if it's just very introductory, to be visible to the community as early as possible. So even though it's never going to be complete, we're never going to finish it.
No,
but if we can start to show people that it's there, in fact, you could even talk about it tomorrow at the opening plenary.
right.
And then we can tell people we want to open it.
Yeah, but the Jun-ichi-san said, well, recommended.
Yeah.
October, mid-October is better.
But
because
we may need to work out what still has to happen to get the site ready and useful. Because I mean, looking at the time frame that Iryna mentioned in her slides, they're looking at their process being, when was it, Iryna? Largely complete this year, isn't it?
Yes, December.
Yeah. So if there's something we can do to either point to them or have them point to us earlier, I think that would be good. And maybe it's just a high-level site saying, look, data.apan.net exists.
Yes. Yeah,
we'll
say it tomorrow. Yes, okay.
It will have these things. If you're interested,
I don't want to force Jun-ichi-san to finish it. It's just like we have
never
to
be finished.
But I think what we already have is it's good enough to be shared
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
as initial website.
And it will never be finished. I mean,
No, probably
Jun-ichi-san, you'll be retired before you finish the website.
Right.
Uh,
Yes. Yes.
so I'm wondering if there's a way we can say that the site is ready enough, and you know, and just simply say, look, if you want to put more information in, here's how to contact. If you want to participate, join the working group. You know, so it becomes an invitation to people, not a complete product and platform.
No.
And then while people are doing that and analyzing it and thinking, oh, I can send you these papers and these great URLs, Jun-ichi-san, myself, you, others here can spend the time to make it better. Like I said, I'd like to get the research data cataloging system working on that site as well. But that's going to take a few months. Without a doubt. But once it's there, we can offer it to every working group in APAN. We can offer it to every institution in Asia. You know, that's very powerful. And then similarly, the resources that Iryna's collecting, there are some really nice papers in Australia and in a few other countries that if we can harvest them and pass them on, great. Or we put them there and Iryna can point to ours.
Which I think like existing working group could collect those such information and then put it in this this website.
And I think it helps to make it more concrete, because like at the moment, like that invitation we sent to all the working groups was well, you know, we didn't get much, but it was it's too vague, right? It's join the working group and help with our discussions. Whereas with the data site, we can now say to them, look at the data site. Can we get the information?
Now they can, so they can see what we are trying to do. Yes.
And then we can fix the site as we go. When we suddenly go, oh, hang on, we want to go this way, not that way. I mean, we need to keep Jun-ichi-san busy, but you know, we also need to show people that.
No, the thing is, like the private, I used to test the network from Godda Space Flight Center to Thailand for over 20 years. And I think 4 years ago, they said, no, cannot. It's going to be private now. I mean, like cannot, you know, review the testing data. Like what? So can do nothing. It's just like went behind the firewall. That's it. Gone.
Look, we had a humanities project in Australia where they were using government data, and the research group went to the government and said, hey, can we make your data accessible to other researchers? And they said, yeah, okay, you can, but it can't leave the state. And it's like, do you know how the internet works? That's fine. We'll put it on a server in your state. The data is in your state. The government was happy. The state government was happy. Yeah, there's some weird things. People don't understand how the technology works, and they expect more security around data that when it's online than it is when it's actually physical. You know, you could probably walk into some of these places and walk out with the data, but you can't log in remotely and access it with your university credentials. Kazu-san has joined. He will solve all our problems.
I'm so sorry for being late to come.
That's all right. We've made it all your work now.
Oh, okay. So how was the discussion? Was smoothly goes well?
Yeah, so far, yes.
So the things I wanted to discuss in this session was that so we need to think about, you know, so here's the APAN working group. So we have to talk about this, you know, the activity of this working group from the viewpoint of the island. In addition to that, you know, that everybody has the interest and the intention, you know, to how to share the data from the domain point of view, for instance. So we have to, you know, satisfy both requirement or you know, the interest in this working group. So, you know, I thought, you know, it's better to discuss about, you know, how to proceed or how to you know, realize to this, you know, the different kind of the interests in this working group.
Yes, that's what we are trying to do.
Yeah.
We might have to, I mean, we've got a couple of minutes left in the
Yeah.
session. But
Probably
maybe
have to
we
be
do
the
that
next
just
session.
after the plenary session.
Yeah, and then we after plenary, and then we try to get this thing out, so we get more participants from the both NREN and the working groups more. Then we can populate our website. I mean, like the web portal to be more useful, but within APAN first, as we agreed. Yeah, so we're not going outside, just within first.
We can also give Iryna the chance to have some breakfast.
Maybe even some sleep.
Oh,
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
yeah.
Well, yeah. I don't know, Dries. You probably. I know that you're gonna say a lot, but we're running out of time. Jennifer, would you come back? So if you stay, and then we can have and then what Konichi Sensei, I call him Konichi-san what here. Konichi Sensei, please come back if it's not, at the same time with the network engineering session. And then the Ajahn Panchai is here also. Panchai is here. So NREN Thailand is here. And then other, please, Suni, come back. Everybody come back. John also. You from Malaysia, right? Now you're still in Malaysia, right? So please.
Yes, I'm still here.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll be back. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we try to, the next session we will concentrate on how can we get it, done before, moving forward a little bit before next APAN 55 in Nepal, I think, is it?
Yep.
Markus, yeah, in Nepal. So we can do that in the next session because we're running out of time here. Okay.
And Basuki, can you join again?
Oh, well, he's busy man.
Oh, really? Okay. But we want
He's
to
gone
hear
already.
about the
So many
Indonesian point of view.
Already. Yeah. I'll get him. I'll try to get him. I'll send him many messages. So yeah. So any quick comments for now?
Yeah, maybe if we could think about small steps people could take, like if you want to contribute to this working group, you can do a lot, or you can just do one small thing. And if we could come up with this list of small things like this data champions.
Oh,
stories,
Iryna, I need to ask you to
Amazon.
get the Google Doc doing the same thing like last time again. Note it down a little bit. So keep on track of who would like to do it. Other step. Would you please?
Yes, I'll do that.
So, okay. We ran out of time. So we'll be back in the, I don't know, late session. And enjoy your lunch. Your, I don't know, coffee, your break or whatever. I'm gonna have my lunch. But then see you a bit in a couple hours. Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank
Cool.
you.
Thank you.
Bye. Better save this chat.
That's actually a good question. I don't know whether the recordings capture the chat.
I don't
know
know.
if I record-
But, yeah, just save
To
it.
record locally, it does, but I don't think I'm not sure the cloud does.
I don't know that. Yeah, probably not with the chat.
Yeah.
But I'll save
And
that.
I am gonna crash here pretty soon. It's well after midnight by now. So, and
Yeah.
I had other stuff going on this week, so I
Right.
can only shift so far. So I will not be at your later session, but an interesting discussion. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. We have a lot of things to do. Long way to go.
I just need to sleep. That's all.
Yeah.
Hey, come
Good
back.
night.
And the next session is 3 hours away. So,
Yeah, so that's the other thing that's really hard is that break in the middle. It's really hard when it's,
Yeah, I would like to get the continuous one since 8 o'clock in the morning, but Some
Yeah,
people
no,
like
but that's
Iryna,
really
but
hard.
it's
If
like 4
you've
o'clock
got
for her.
European contributors, you do
Yeah.
not want to be in the first session. My team was lucky that all of our talks are in the 9 a.m. for you slot, which isn't too bad, especially for my guys on the West Coast. But yeah, it just gets challenging. So
Yes.
someday we'll all be in the same place, and this will be much easier, honestly. 'cause,
Yeah, next time.
it's hard when you're on a different schedule than the house that you're in.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Thank
those
you
poor
much.
dogs of yours are
Really-
very confused.
Yeah. Take care.
Yeah,
You too.
yeah.
See you
Take
later.
care. Bye-bye. Basuki, are you still there? Are you're not? He's not there. He's not here. He's somewhere. So yeah.
That's all right.
All right. Okay. I'll see you, Markus.
See you the next session. Thanks,
Yeah.
Chai.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.